The spotlight was Lila's best friend. It knew her secrets. The way she tilted her head just so before a complicated turn. The almost imperceptible tremor in her hands before a demanding leap. At 22, she reigned supreme as the National Ballet's youngest principal dancer. Her legs were her instruments, carving breathtaking stories in the air with a grace that left audiences breathless. Then came the rain. Lila remembered the intoxicating scent of petrichor hanging heavy in the air and the vibrant neon lights reflecting in the puddles on the road. The rain was ferocious, a relentless drumming that stole the world's sounds. She was on her way to celebrate her promotion with her best friend, Marco. The celebration never happened. The rain intensified, blurring the world into streaks of color. A sudden hydroplane, a desperate correction, the scream of tires fighting for purchase on the slick asphalt. Then, the echoing shriek of metal tearing metal apart. Lila woke in a sterile white room, the air thick with the antiseptic smell of doctors and nurses. Her body throbbed with dull, unrelenting pain, a symphony of agony that made her gasp. Tubes invaded her arms, snaking beneath thin hospital gowns, and monitors beeped a relentless rhythm, the sound grating. But sharper than the physical pain was a sense of wrongness, a profound imbalance. It was the lack of weight, a gaping absence. Panic bloomed in her chest, a cold, suffocating flower. With trembling hands, she yanked the thin blanket back. Where her legs should have been, where her life should have flowed, there was only emptiness. Bandages were wrapped tightly around the stumps, stark white against her pale skin. A sound clawed its way from her throat. Not a scream of anguish, not a sob of despair, but a fractured, hysterical laugh. "Well," she forced out, the words laced with bitter irony, "guess I won't be dancing Swan Lake anymore." The medical staff called it a miracle she'd survived. Lila saw it as a cruel joke played by fate. She was a dancer who couldn't dance, a bird with clipped wings. Days bled into weeks. Lila retreated into herself, building impenetrable walls around her heart. Marco visited, his eyes filled with concern, and a pain that mirrored, yet couldn't match, her own. She snapped at him, pushing him away with cruel words she immediately regretted. She couldn't bear to see the pity in his gaze, the forced cheerfulness that couldn't mask the truth. She refused to see anyone else. Her parents, her dance teachers, all were turned away. She was broken, a shattered artifact. She didn't want their sympathy, their empty platitudes, their well-meaning promises that everything would be okay. They couldn't understand. They didn't feel the fandom ache where her legs used to be, the memories of movement forever etched in her mind. Prosthetics. She spat the word at Deb, the perky, relentlessly cheerful physical therapist who wore garish neon sneakers. "You want me to walk on plastic legs, let alone dance?" Deb, bless her resilient optimism, merely shrugged. "I've seen crazier things."
Yeah?
"Like what? People sprouting wings and flying off a cliff?" "Like a guy who climbed Everest with one lung," Deb said calmly. "And a dancer in Germany who does Swan Lake on blades." She tossed Lila a glossy brochure. On the cover, a photograph of a dancer mid-leap, her sleek prosthetic legs gleaming under the stage lights. Lila stared at the picture, her heart clenching with a mixture of envy and disbelief. Ha! Hope, a fragile, unwanted seed, began to sprout in the barren landscape of her despair. The initial attempts were agonizing. Every step was a battle, a painful reminder of what she had lost. The prosthetics chafed, the joints felt stiff and unnatural, her muscles screamed in protest. Her first practice session ended with her sprawled face down on the gym mat, sweat plastering her hair to her forehead. The prosthetic blades, sleek, curved things designed for running, felt like weighty shackles, not extensions of herself. "This is stupid," she growled, slamming her fist against the floor. "Pointless. I can't do this." From the doorway, a snort. Lila turned, her face a thundercloud. A kid, maybe 10 years old, stood holding a basketball. One of his arms was a prosthetic. "You yell a lot," he observed, his voice surprisingly matter-of-fact. "You eavesdrop a lot," she snapped back, instantly regretting her harsh tone. He grinned, unperturbed. "My arm fell off during a game once." Coach totally freaked out. "I just screwed it back on." He demonstrated with a practiced click. "Wanna see my free throw?" Against her will, Lila found herself snorting with laughter. There was something disarmingly honest about the kid's bravado, a resilience that resonated deep within her. His name, was Ethan. He hung around the gym, shooting hoops and offering surprisingly insightful observations with brutal, refreshing honesty. He became an unlikely friend, a constant reminder that limitations were often self-imposed. With Ethan's unwitting encouragement and Deb's relentless optimism, Lila persevered. She learned to walk again, then to balance, then to move with a semblance of her former grace. The pain lessened, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. Months passed. Lila started small, practicing simple ballet steps in the privacy of her room. The mirror became her harshest critic, reflecting her tentative movements, the slight wobble in her balance. But it also showed her a flicker of her old self, the dancer who refused to be silenced. She began to experiment, incorporating elements of modern dance, of martial arts, of anything that felt right with her new body. Her prosthetics, which at first felt alien, began to feel like extensions of herself, tools for creating a new kind of art. 6 months later, Lila stood backstage at a small local theater, her heart hammering against her ribs, not with fear, but with a burning fury. The director, a well-meaning but ultimately clueless man, had slotted her into a special inspirational segment of the show. A slow, maudlin solo where she would overcome her limitations. The phrase made her skin crawl. Limitations. As if her legs were the only interesting thing about her, as if her life had been reduced to a heartwarming anecdote. She had tried to explain to him that she didn't want to be defined by her tragedy, that she wanted to dance, not to inspire pity. But he hadn't understood. He patted her on the shoulder and told her that her story was powerful. So, Lila had made a decision. The music began. Soft, mournful strings filled the theater, the kind of music that tugged at the heartstrings. The audience leaned forward, tissues at the ready, anticipating a tearjerker. Then BAM, the track switched. A pulsating bass line vibrated through the floor. Drums pounded, a primal, insistent rhythm that shook the very foundations of the theater. And Lila moved. Not carefully. Not inspirational. Ferocious. She leaped onto a platform, her prosthetic blades flashing under the stage lights. She backflipped off the platform, landing in a deep split. She spun so fast her blades became silver blurs, a mesmerizing dance of light and motion. The audience erupted in a roar. The director's jaw dropped open. He looked like a fish gasping for air. Lila moved with a raw, visceral energy she never knew she possessed, channeling her pain, her anger, her defiance into every movement. It wasn't ballet in the traditional sense. It was something new, something raw, something uniquely her own. She had taken the director's saccharine vision and shattered it, replaced it with a performance that was both breathtaking and brutal. It was a statement, a declaration. She was not broken. She was not defined by her disability. She was a dancer, and she would dance on her own terms. The song ended. Silence hung in the air, thick with shock and awe. Then, the applause started, a slow, hesitant clapping that quickly escalated into a deafening ovation. People were on their feet, cheering, whistling, their faces alight with genuine admiration. Lila stood center stage, her chest heaving, sweat dripping from her brow. She felt exhausted, exhilarated, and utterly, completely alive. Afterward, a reporter from a local newspaper approached her, her eyes wide with amazement. "How did you learn to dance like that again?" she asked, scribbling furiously in her notepad. Lila wiped the sweat from her brow, a faint smile playing on her lips. "The same way I did the first time," she said. She nodded toward the front row where Ethan was waving his prosthetic arm enthusiastically. "By failing. A lot." She glanced down at her blades, still humming with residual energy. They weren't a symbol of her loss, but of her resilience. They were a testament to her refusal to be defined by her limitations. "Oh, and one more thing," she added, a mischievous glint in her eyes. She kicked off her prosthetics, the sound echoing sharply in the suddenly silent room. With a fluid, practiced movement, she hopped onto the reporter's chair and balanced on her hands in a perfect handstand. "Turns out," she said, upside down and grinning, "I've got great core strength."